in Jamaica. Not a lot of persons have health insurance, and there's no universal health insurance in Jamaica, except for persons who are on NHF that only pays for medication for chronic diseases. It doesn't pay for anything else. No visits, nothing at all. No investigations is paid for by that insurance. In the States, lots of persons have insurance, special arrangements where they can add on to get coverage, not available to us.
So we're going to now be looking at holistic health in Jamaica, and I would like to welcome Dawn Marie Petgrave. She's an associate psychologist at the DeMarie Institute, as well as Dr. David Garwood. He's a medical director at the Perfect Health Medical and Holistic Center. I'm going to invite both of them on for the panel as we discuss holistic health in Jamaica. Please make them feel welcome. Oh. Now, if she was here yesterday in this suit, we'd look very Christmassy. Come along. Yes, and come along, David. All right. So, let's get seated. All right, so both of you have been doing different things in the health sector for some time. I want to start at the point of COVID. What was happening in terms of our children who are no longer in school? What was happening to that working class professional that was, what was happening out there? And then even just in the families, what were you seeing happening? And what are your comments and observations? Let's start with you.
All right, thank you, and that's a great question. So one of the things that stood out the most for me is that there is so much abuse in our children in Jamaica. Well, worldwide, but in Jamaica. So when they are going to school face-to-face, at least they had an opportunity to leave the abusive home for a little while. Now, when COVID was here, or more rampant, they were stuck at home 24/7 with the abusers. Also, another thing that stood out for us is the fact that if something happened, teachers are able to see signs. Now, nobody was seeing what was happening. So when they returned to face-to-face, many of the children, you were seeing a lot of anger, or you were seeing a lot of students becoming very withdrawn. And then of all the fights that started in school and such forth. And so you're home, you're with a tablet, and it's just me, it's mine. There is no group work, there is no sharing, there is none of that. And then you go back to school and little Johnny wants to touch your lunch bag or touch your things. And so they've been isolated for so long that you now see that the anger among children erodes, and children do not know how to articulate their emotions. So it comes out in their behaviors. So that was the what stood out the most for me during COVID with the children, absolutely.
Dr. David?
Okay, yes, I will agree that the isolation, right, actually sort of depersonalize a lot of the kids, and the same experience where once they get back into that social networking, then they have to readjust to that situation. And for some, it is challenging. Like she started off by saying that some of the household is abusive, and hence children live what they learn. Mm-hmm. So at home it is abusive. They have to go back into a social sort of networking, and therefore that comes out, yes.
But are they adequately served? The ability to talk to a psychiatrist or talk to a guidance counselor, what's the support like for children?
Well, I am not aware of the network that actually available. I know that a lot of the schools
have been assigned.
Right, they have been assigned guidance counselors. But how effective that is,
right, that was my point.
is actually the challenge. I don't know whether or not, since you are in the field of psychology, whether or not you have any more liaison with these.
I do. So I'll share an experience. So a mother called me because she wanted me to speak with her daughter. So I said, well, what about the guidance counselor at school? Because they were out of, I'm in Kingston, they're in St. Anne. And she said, well, she went to school, she told the guidance counselor, I want to kill myself. The guidance counselor response was, look, a girl, come out of my office and go to your class. That was the response.
What age group is that child in?
She's 15. So, number one, we're not knocking guidance counselors. Let me just get that out there. But some of the cases that we're seeing, they may not necessarily be trained to deal with what we're seeing now. And so we have to relook education, number one. We have to relook the home. We do have a parental crisis, whether we want to admit it or not, because just like Doc says, children live what they learn. I had a situation, there was a 6-year-old young lady that I got called for. Now, when I heard, the report says she boxed a little boy, right? So I'm thinking maybe she's a big 6-year-old. She this fat, look like a little mosquito. So I got there and I said, baby, tell auntie what happened. And she said, well, him skipped me in the line. So I said, well, could you have done anything differently? She looked at me frightened like, no, me box him up. True story. So I finally, made requests for the parents, finally got the parents to come. Chopping up the story, parents walk in, I'm looking at the father's persona. Father came, just sat in a little corner like this. Mother came and she was just going, and I can't get a word in. So you saw where the abuse was coming from. So it got to the point where the mother did, in fact, confess that she hit her husband, and the daughter saw that. Now, we know men are not going to report domestic violence. And this is why we don't know the numbers. So when we talk about intimate partner, we talk about men hitting on women, but we don't know the statistics of our men. But in fact, a lot of our men are suffering. And so this little girl is doing exactly what she's seen her mother doing.
And added to that, there are some parents who actually will give instructions to the kids. You know, this is how you deal
with it.
With
this type of situation.
Right. You know, so he skipped you, so therefore you just box him up. Yeah. That is the punishment. That is how you express that.
In terms of therapy, and even just calling in a professional in that particular area, not like say we're going to a GP. Are you seeing more Jamaicans adapting to take on therapy or asking about therapy?
Yes. Yes, I think the government, well, there are some initiatives by Ministry of Health, and we see some of them. Talk Up. In COVID, there was an ad all the time, and it was just saying talk up, talk up. And so we see a lot more persons talking up. I think the stigma is really, really just disappearing, where only mad people get counseling, or if you go to counseling, you're weak, especially our men. And you could tell my heart really, really is towards our men, because, women, we have our girlfriends. We could always go talk, and men don't do that. And so we realize now that a lot of our men have been suffering in silence, all right? But what is happening is social media is talking, a lot of people are talking, and I think a lot of persons are becoming more self-aware.
That
right?
They may need some
that
help.
They may need. So the more self-aware you become, you're okay with getting therapy, even if somebody thinks you're weak. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think organizations like Jamaica Psychological Association, they're doing a lot of webinars also just to get the word out there. And it's everybody. Mental health is everybody's problem. It's everybody's problem. And so I was sharing with a young lady recently. I got to this place and I was like, okay, she's having a bad day, so I need to smile. Right? So I need to smile more, right, to kind of regulate what she's feeling, because I don't know what she's going through, all right? And so I got into a conversation with her, and it turns out there was just so many issues that she went to work with. So I am saying, can you imagine even just a simple smile can save somebody's life? And so it's all of our business now to be our brother's keeper, to listen to the children. We're not listening to our children. They're telling us things. We're telling them move and go. The teachers, a lot of teachers, not knocking teachers, but we're labeling the children, the little girl bad, you know, the little boy, dunce, going at the corner. He won't listen. And we don't stop to find out what is causing these children and these persons to behave in the manner in which they're behaving.
Doc, I'm going to throw this one to you. Maybe it can be a gender thing, but if somebody is going through a lot and their mental health is now in a state of, I need help, but they don't know, what happens to the body of a woman and what happens to the body of a man? Do we store pain and trauma in a particular way, or, you know, how does it normally manifest itself?
Well, one of the things that is known is that, like she mentioned earlier, that just the smile, right? Not only does it set the tone for the other person, but it also does a lot for your immune system, a lot for your nervous system that you don't even know, right? The opposite of that, you know, will actually set off a lot of biochemical reactions within your body, which manifest in physical actions and also illnesses.
Like the tension that I'm feeling in my
exactly.
neck and my shoulders.
Right. And so, yes, men in particular, because they find different ways of release. All right? Women will speak to their mothers or speak to their girlfriends. Men most often will take it to the bar. Mm-hmm. And then we have another problem setting in of addiction, whether it's a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, but substance abuse come in. Once you get to that point of substance abuse, then other things come on board. Because amidst that substance abuse come also the thing of violence, you know, not being able to regulate
an appropriate response to the
exactly.
situation.
Right. So it is a very complex situation, very, very complex. And whether or not, you know, people are taking up, you know, some of the options that are available, and whether they are seeking out adequately is another thing. You know, there might be an uptick in men seeking out help, but it is still far from being where it's supposed to be.
Now, in terms of our clinics or, you know, the health services that the government has implemented across the island, so of course we don't have these perfect hospitals all across the island. What is actually offered at the clinics across the island now? What kind of services do we go in and get?
So some of the community health centers, there's a specific day when it's mental health day. Again, it's getting people to access those services. But if I could just backtrack a little, some of the things that I'm getting are referrals from medical doctors, because persons are going to the medical doctors with all these symptoms, but then the symptoms are psychosomatic. So you may feel like, but doc, my head, something is going on. There's nothing there. They do the scans, it's not, you know, you're not. So it becomes psychosomatic and the body keeps the score, all right? And so we are now, like one of the things that I do now, I ensure that I'm working with medical doctors and I'm ensure that I'm working with psychiatrists, because as a psychologist, I can't write prescriptions. And sometimes when persons come to me, they are already at a disorder level. So when I do an assessment, just to see, so let's say you come in and you're not sleeping and you're not eating and all these things are going on, I might do a couple of assessments. One of them is the GAD-7, which is the general anxiety. So it can show that you're having anxiety symptoms, or it shows that you're having anxiety disorder. So if it gets to a disorder, it means that talk therapy, which is what I do, is not going to regulate you. So I first might need to get you on some medication, even temporarily, just to get you to that place where we could talk. So what am I saying? Let's say you hit your finger, and I'm saying, oh, just just breathe. Chances are, if you get something for the pain, it may regulate you so that we can talk and you'll hear what I'm saying. And so I think one of the things we have to do now is develop communities where we're all working together, right? I had a young lady who reached out to me. She's bipolar 2, diagnosed at the hospital. She called me because she was having an episode. So she went to the clinic. There was no psychiatrist at the clinic. So they sent her to UWI Hospital. She went to the hospital.
UWI Hospital in Kingston.
In Kingston, right. She went to UWI Hospital. Of course, she's not dying, so she's not being seen. So now she's calling me. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't treat you. And now this lady shows up at my office and she's having a breakdown because nobody's helping me. Why is it so hard to access help when we need it? And so though we have come a far way, we still have a far way to go. But I'm very happy for conversations like these.
To shed light on this particular issue.
Absolutely.
Right. As far as the government institutions are concerned, although some institutions will not have a psychiatrist that is assigned, but they have mental health nurses
Right.
Okay.
that will help in many of these cases. The mental health nurse can actually treat, right? And so, but it's access and also the awareness of the individual, to actually seek out these help. Sometimes they don't, and again, it could be because of a lack of knowledge as to where and how they can access these services.
For example, UWI and UTech, they offer degrees in psychology. So we know that people are graduating from these institutions with it. So if there is a need, is it that the cost is too prohibitive, or we're not, or psychologists are not opting to stay in Jamaica? What are you seeing? Are people filling the posts to help?
Well, it's a mixture of both, because when you look online and see the monies I could be making overseas, it's a little depressing, and this is a people's business, and I love people. So it's very hard for somebody to show up and don't have any money and not treat them. It's very hard. I can't do it. But then I need to pay my bills, And so you're absolutely correct. I think one of the things why a lot of persons don't access the services is because they think it costs too much. However, there are services out there that are free of cost. So again, Ministry of Health and PAHO just launched an initiative called Problem Management Plus. Okay. So there were over, I think, 100 and something persons that were trained, I think, not so sure. But there were many persons that were trained. And how Problem Management Plus works is the first responders. So there are a lot of community groups that are trained, pastors, leaders, because most persons go to the church first. And then that's a whole nother story, because we may be praying the devil out of somebody that really, really is mentally ill, So now we have a lot of leaders who are trained to identify certain problems. So you do a pre-assessment and if this person needs to see a trained therapist, or is this just anger issue that you can deal with, and then you have the know-how how to. Now, how many persons are accessing those? I don't know, because you have to give personal information. I think the message, what is the message I would send, is for persons to understand that therapy is a safe space, and as professionals, we are licensed, which means that we have to follow codes and conducts, which means that when it comes to confidentiality, every client is signing a confidentiality form. There is no judgment. There's no judgment. I don't care what you tell me. There's no judgment. My job is to help you with the coping mechanism to help you become better. And I think if we can get people to believe that, we will have more persons accessing therapy.
Give me an idea of the cost for a 1-hour session with a psychologist.
Anywhere from 6,000 to 25,000, depending on, where you are. I'm somewhere less than middle, because again, I do this from the school building, so it gives me leverage to be able to help a lot more person. But also, I founded a therapy center at my church, Life Care Center. So for my church's community and for persons that lives within that community, I see them for free. Now, I am the only therapist there, and I have my private practice, so, I can't see but so many persons. But I do go there. I'm there at least 2 days for the week where I see persons who are unable to pay for therapy, especially children. It's very hard to say no, when a child is acting up, and we look at the numbers and we look at the population and we say, oh, they're 20% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. So if we don't take care of them now holistically, who are we going to become in 10, 20 years from now? What is the future going to look like for us?
Doc, in terms of, new people coming, graduating, is, becoming a doctor still a thing?
Yes, I think it is still a thing.
Lawyer, doctor were like the top two things people wanted to be. But like
yes, and they still do that. Although it has been proven that it is not necessarily the most lucrative thing to be in. And in particular when you are operating within a third world country. Like she was alluding to that, okay, if she was to go abroad, she could make a whole lot more money. Just before we came on, I had a discussion. Sometimes you can make a whole lot more money abroad, but in terms of your operating costs and your standard of living, then it could cost you a whole lot more too. So when you're here, you can mix things around and things. And yeah, there's a lot of persons. We are graduating more doctors and dentists and lawyers and nurses, than ever before. So people are still going in the profession. And it is well needed because, as you will see, we still have a crisis in the health sector in terms of being able to adequately provide for, the persons who shows up at our doors. In the public sector, there is a lot of private practice around, because I remember years ago when I was in Negril, there were only 2 of us in Negril at the time, and then later on 3. I guess we even have a hospital in Negril now. Where I am now in Savlama, there was probably about 5 doctors' office. Now we have about 10 or more. So yeah, there are a lot more doctors being graduated and coming into the field. And it is still a thing, yes.
Tell me about the hospital that is in Westmoreland.
Well, we have 3 hospitals in Westmoreland. We have 2 private hospitals, one in Savlama, Royal Medical, and which is primarily obstetrics and gynecology. They offer other services, but that is primarily their focus. Okay. And then we have this one in Negril, which is a general hospital, right?
This one is private, the one in Negril?
Yes, private, yes, the one in Negril. And then in Savlamar, we have the Savlamar General Public Hospital, which has increased in the classification. I think they are no longer a Class C. I think they're probably a Class B hospital. And in terms of their bed counts and the number of specialists who is on staff. But we still have issues in terms of space. There is not enough bed space, to the point where, I don't know if anyone saw this, but there was something on the news where beach chairs were in the emergency room to accommodate persons who otherwise would be sitting in a chair for 3 days not being able to get a bed.
What time period did this come on the news? Is this recent or this was?
Yeah, that was like
COVID?
within the last month. It was on the news within the last month.
Is this in relation to any of the outbreaks that are happening now?
No, it is not. Although the outbreak could actually add more burden, right? But it is not. A lot of what we deal with in Westmoreland in particular, and it is not unique to Westmoreland either, is the violence, the motor vehicle accidents.
Okay.
Right?
Motor vehicle or motorcycle?
Motor vehicles in general.
Okay.
I mean, just 2 days ago, we had 5 died at once in a motor vehicle accident. And, you know, you can look for that every single day. There's 2, 3, 4, 5 people every day.
So when someone comes in and they were in a motor vehicle accident or a motorcycle, obviously limbs and it's really tragic, are you able to successfully treat people, do surgeries and that sort of thing at this hospital?
Yes.
So you don't have to send them to Kingston?
No, there are times when they need to be transferred, yes. We do have to transfer patients, in particular patients who would have things like traumatic brain injuries, because we don't have neurosurgeons and staff in these hospitals, right? So we'd have to transfer them to UER, KPH.
So that's because of the specialists why you're
Right.
transferring,
Yes.
not the equipment?
Equipment is also a challenge. We don't have everything there. As a matter of fact, diagnostic. The hospital provides ultrasound and x-rays in terms of imaging. If you need to do a CT scan or an MRI, then it has to be done privately, or you are transferred or carried to Cornwall Regional, where you could get your CT scan done, and back to Savlamar, right? If you need an MRI, it has to be done privately. There's no MRI in the public sector here.
Why not?
I mean, the private sector. The private sector has, but not public.
But I mean, the average person would like to have this kind of service, so what is preventing or hindering that from happening?
Okay, well, probably that question is for Mr. Tufta.
Okay, but on that note then, in terms of free access to healthcare, that's something that comes up. And some people are saying, no, they don't want to see it. Some people are saying, yes, they want to see it. You know, of course, there might be more taxes that are charged to us. What are your views with regard to free access to healthcare?
I am all for the free access. I mean, free is good. Free is good. But someone has to pay. All right? Now, it is argued that, you know, if people were paying, then we could afford to better equip the institutions, you know, but outside of that, I think that every government should have, as part of, you know, a responsibility to the citizens, to have free access to healthcare, free access to education, you know, and among other things. But yes, those are critical areas. And we still have, you know, like being able to access services at the public hospital for free.
Like, list some of those for me.
No, anytime that you go into a hospital, it is for free. Once you enter into the hospital, you don't pay a fee, right? It is for free. You can have surgeries done, you know, persons who are on the different clinics, orthopedics clinic, gynecology.
Chest Hospital is like that as well?
Chest?
Chest Hospital in Kingston?
Yeah, yeah, it's government run. However, what happened is that sometimes you need a surgery. For example, you're in an accident and you have multiple fractures and you need orthopedic surgery. The hospital may not provide for the plates and the screws and the things that you're going to need to have the surgery done. So you're going to have to go now and purchase those, access them, take them back to the hospital to have your surgery done. So although it is free, they're not everything that is in place for you to get everything for free.
Can you do a comparison, like what happens in the United States or even in the UK with regard to, access to health services?
No, I can't comprehensively cover that, but I know that one of the things is that in first world countries, outside of those that have social health care, part of the burden is taken up by health insurance, right? Here, not a lot of persons have health insurance, and there's no universal health insurance in Jamaica, except for persons who are on NHF that only pays for medication, right, for chronic diseases, right? So that is the difference. We have coverage for chronic diseases in terms of your medication cost. It doesn't pay for anything else. No visits, nothing at all. No investigations is paid for by that insurance. In the States, lots of persons have, insurance and special arrangements where they can add on to get coverage, not available to us.
All right. So recently, Jamaica experienced an earthquake, felt right throughout the island. And some people might say, oh, sure, a little earthquake, what that going to do? Did you hear of persons talking about any trauma that may have, been triggered because of that natural disaster?
Oh, yes. So actually, once the conference is over and I go back home, there are a couple of companies that I'm already booked for to do treatment with staff who are still shaken up from the earthquake and have not been able to function well at work because of the aftermath. So yeah, there are schools that have already been calling in psychologists just to talk with the students about, just even get them just to talk through it. What did you feel? Because now every sound they hear.
Is it a tremor?
Right.
Is it me?
Yes. So yes, persons have been severely affected by the earthquake.
So an earthquake is almost like an anomaly for us here. But every year we know hurricane season going to start in June and then it ends in November. Does that have any implications for us, like having to prepare for, anytime it start raining hard, it might be a hurricane. Will that cause any type of trauma or triggers for us?
Well, what I always tell persons is to plan for it. So what do I mean? I'll use Christmas, because Christmas time is when the suicide rate is highest, because people are lonely. And, by now, the whole place just feel like Christmas. There's just a feeling, right? And so persons who don't have significant others, persons who might have lost a loved one or so forth, during these holiday seasons, it becomes harder for them. So I will tell them, plan for that. Now, when it comes to death and you have the anniversary of the death of a loved one, I would say, plan for that. Okay, what does plan for that mean? So my mother died. My father died. So let's talk about that. So my father died. And every year when it's coming to October, I start feeling myself going like this. And all I'm thinking about is him being dead. So how I plan for it, I start doing vacations around that time, right?
To boost.
And so that it shifts the focus from the death, right, to something else, something enjoying, all right? So that's something that we can do. And I'm going to encourage the schools especially to do this, because next year this time, it's going to be a reminder that the earthquake happened. Maybe you could use the day to become a fun day for the kids. So it takes their mind and their thinking differently, right? So the subconscious mind only gives you what you constantly think about. So if all we're thinking about is, oh my God, that earthquake happened, and this, it's going to give you more of that. It's going to give you more fatigue, more anxiety, more of that. But if you're thinking happy thoughts, then it's going to give you things to be happy for. And so I would say, from now, let us start planning for next year, especially within our schools. Even within the workplaces, persons could make it a fun day. I don't know, choose a color. Everybody wear green. Green is my favorite color. Everybody wear green. Funny hat day, funny socks day. whatever you can do just to shift the focus from focusing on the trauma, which is going to cause you to feel sad and to release more stress hormones.
What I think, though, is that that is preparation in terms of your mental, right?
Right.
But there is a readiness, a preparedness that should be in place, which is not. As you said, we have not had a really major earthquake in a long time. And so therefore there is no preparation for earthquakes. We have, every year, we would announce when hurricane season begins and when it ends, and what preparations, ODPM, whatever they are called, is supposed to keep on reminding us about what we need to do in the event of a hurricane. There is nothing in terms of if there is an earthquake, right? I find that even simple things like a fire drill, right? We have these that are done at schools, at different workplaces and things. But then, what I know for sure is that a lot of it is just the signs that are put up. Assemble point, assemble point. Call them out to move. There's a fire, and it's pure chaos. Chaos.
So you want us to take it more seriously?
More seriously, right. We should have something in place to have this kind of preparation being done regularly, because we don't know when we're going to get the next one, and we have a lot of faults lying in Jamaica, and so there at any time at all. I think what has been our savior so far since Port Royal earthquake is the fact that a lot of the tremors that we are getting are not deep enough to cause any major shift. Right? They're very superficial. But if we should get a very deep one, then we are in trouble.
All right. In terms of diagnosing different types of things, no, that's not a question I wanted to ask you. The adherence to taking medication as prescribed, tell me a little bit about that. And obviously, I know we have some elderly people here. You know, sometimes it's so hard to tell your father or your grandma that they must be taking certain things. And they're like, I don't need it. How do we go through that process?
All right. Several things here. There is something that is referred to as pill burden. That is the amount of medication that they have to take at once. There are several ways that we can address that, right? I know that I happen to see patients who comes in with a prescription 3 pages, right? When you count that up, you could be talking about 11 or 12 different medications to be taken. That is
overwhelming.
Overwhelming, very, very. And so it is difficult to get adherence, right? And if you're not getting adherence, then you get very poor outcome, right? Now, that is something that can be addressed because there are combination therapies that are there now. You can get one pill that is going to be covering several different things that is happening. You know, you have cholesterol medication, pressure medication, and sugar in one pill combined. So instead of giving the patient 3 different medications, or 6 for that matter, you can give him one that covers 3 different things. So that is part of ways of addressing compliance, you know, and things. However, Jamaican has a problem with taking pills, full stop.
Generally.
You know, I can't take the whole heap of pill, doctor. That don't make sense. Is there a way that I can, you know? The thing about it is that you sometimes persons overlook the fact that the disease process will be causing lots of harm and damage to vital organs. Persons are going to Google now and they Google every medication that they get to look for the side effects, right? But this have this side effect that side effect. But what about the side effects of the disease process that you are neglecting? You have diabetes. It's going to affect your eyes. It's going to affect your kidneys. It's going to affect your heart. And for the men, it's going to affect another vital organs for them as well. Right? Now, sometimes if you take the time out to explain to them what the disease is doing to the vital organs and why it is necessary to adhere to taking the prescription, then you can make some headway in that for as long as you are able to. So if they come in every 3 months to see you, you have to remind them that this is what we need to do in order to reach our target to prevent the progression of this disease process.
Another thing too, because let's say, you know, we're going to be having returning residents, for example, and they may be used to particular medication where they are and the ability to take it to Jamaica or source it. How do you navigate that?
Right. Most of the medications that are taken abroad can be had here, just that the brands may be different. But the active ingredients, right, we have what is called generics. The active ingredients are basically the same, right? So yes, we can access them here. And for the most part, they are cheaper here too.
Okay, but you're just talking through
yes.
and letting them, I prefer Cataflam. What else are you giving me? I want that brand.
All right, well, yeah, we don't, we have Cataflam, but say another medication. This is what I am accustomed to taking. Oh, okay, we don't have that brand here, but we have this one, which is the same thing. So let's try this one and see if you feel comfortable with it. One of the problem with older folks, even here in Jamaica, older folks, they actually identify their medication by the color and the size, right? And different companies might prepare the same drug, but with a different color, a different size. It is difficult to get them to take that. No, this is not what I'm accustomed to. It is not this color. It is, you know, it's the same thing, Miss Jane. No, 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 no. You know, that isn't a problem. But yeah, we can work around that.
And I think another thing that always comes up is the patient must be completely honest with the doctors about what are the symptoms, because they might say some of them and not say all of them. So
right.
You might not be able to treat correctly. Or
well, what happened is that the truth about it is that if you are diligent enough, the average time with a physician, I think, is 15 minutes, standard. But I guess if you are diligent enough and you want to go into getting all the information out, the patient will come with some complaints, right? Probably it's the most burning one. And some of them that are returning residents and coming from places like Canada, for example. In Canada, I understand that you cannot present to the doctor with more than 2 minor complaints, 1 major. No, you cannot. You cannot. Yes, another visit. You cannot address more than 2 minor complaints or 1 major complaint per visit.
Because they have free.
Yes, or else.
They have free access to healthcare there.
Or else you would have to be put for another visit to address the other problems. Right? Here we listen to all what you have to say. All right, that is the first part of it. The patient complains. Then you ask additional questions to get things out. And based on that, then you might request specific investigations to help you to drill down to the real problem. And if you're able to get to the root cause, as it is called, the root cause, for persons who practice functional medicine, which is trying to get to the root cause of the problem, then quite often you end up treating one major thing still, right? You didn't set out to treat one thing, but you identify what is the real problem, and if you address that problem, then the rest goes away.
All right, and as we close out, before we go to the questions, I want to ask either of you, if you could paint a picture of what, you know, your specific area or the health sector will look like over the next 2 years. What do you envision? Reality. What do you envision happening? What kind of improvements you think will be coming on stream? Let's start with you.
Well, can I say what I would love to have?
No, tell me what you think will really happen and then what you want to happen.
All right. I really do think, like, for therapies, we'll probably see a lot more unconventional areas because people are reading and, like Doc says, they're Googling. Mm-hmm. So yesterday, one of the panelists, the one that was right here, outside, architect outside.
The
landscape, right. So he spoke about the greenery, and a lot more persons are understanding that even just walking outside and letting your foot touch the ground is therapy, right? Because they're Googling and they're learning, right? Persons are understanding that simply breathing, learning how to breathe properly is therapy. So I feel if we continue on that trajectory, we will see a lot more persons becoming more intentional about their mental health. So
and we are seeing more parks and green spaces being developed in that same vein as well.
Yes, definitely. And another area that is being developed is forensic psychology. So
what is that?
Okay. So forensic psychology, we work, so I'm both clinical and forensic. So the forensic side work with criminology, law enforcement. So for example, I think yesterday we were talking about the guy, the cousin that killed his cousin and the 4 children and stuff like that. So that's a case that we all wanted to jump on because we want to know what on earth is going on in the mind of this person for you to do what you do. And so forensic psychologist helps a lot with crime, and it helps a lot with profiling. So if you see a number of similar crimes, so we can sit down and we can profile that offender to the point to help the police to catch that person. Also, we deal with a lot of assessments, forensic assessments that can help to see if this person really is just a criminal, pathology, or if they have, or if they have a mental illness. So the assessment tools that we use rule out those things. So then it better helps the prison system also, right? It also helps with rehabilitation. Now, DCS has recently, well, not recently, a couple of years now involved education in the prison system. I don't know if you're aware of that.
DCS, please spell that.
Oh, Jesus.
Department of Correctional
Services, right. And so persons who are within the prison system can now access education. There was one guy that was going to UE while he was at the Spanish Town Correctional Center. Yeah. Got his degree because they have a summer school program, which I go, I help out at that prison. And so that's forensic. So I feel that's an area of psychology that you will see a lot more of because the need is so great, not just in Jamaica, but throughout the Caribbean, because most of the time when we have cases that require a forensic psychologist, we would import one. Well, we really don't have to do that anymore because we have a couple of people that have graduated from a master's program. And we're really looking to help to lessen crime in Jamaica.
And if you could have one wish for your sector over the next 5 years, what would it be?
To be paid.
To be paid with your counterparts overseas, on par with your counterparts overseas. I will take that. And Doc, for you, over the next 2 years, you can make it specific to the locale of Westmoreland. What do you think is going to be happening over the next 2 years?
Well, there's a lot of changes that are taking place in Westmoreland, albeit slow, but like we mentioned earlier, we now have a general hospital located in Negril. What I would also, there has been a lot of talk for many years now, have to be probably about 20 years to upgrade the health center here in Negril, right? If that is upgraded, it could serve the general public better, right? I don't know what is causing the delay. There has been a lot of inputs from different groups, but we're still not there yet.
So we're Still lobby for it.
Yeah, I think we still have to move along. There are some things that are moving slowly here, but all in all, there has been an improvement over the years, and I expect to see that improvement continue and probably accelerate. So the next 2 to 5 years, when you come back to Negril, we are going to be definitely looking much better, you know, and Westmoreland in general. We have challenges at the public hospital, but I think it is something that is being thought about because Westmoreland is pretty big, and there is a lot of commercial activities. A major part of the tourist business is in Westmoreland, and hence we need to have a public hospital that is up to speed. And I think we're good. Yes.
So what would be your one big wish?
All right, my one big wish would have been to have more persons putting their efforts behind developing the parish. That is, put their money where their mouths are. That's basically my big wish.
All right, thank you so much, Doc. Okay, so now we move into some question and answers. First question.
Mic check. Okay. So from the online audience, this came in when you were talking about the mental health of men. So for the men who have experienced physical or emotional abuse, are you seeing an uptick in the number of proportion of men seeking intervention? Because it looks like the media mostly focuses on the women.
Yes, personally, I am seeing a lot more men, but I think they come because they're referred. So one brethren comes see me, and then he's like, no, man, I forgot to miss Petgrave. So I think that's how I've been getting all these men. Plus, I speak on a lot of men forum. So, you know, something that I think is quite interesting is that a man may come to you for a particular situation, but then when you do the assessments, you realize that all that he's going through now is coming from childhood traumas that were never treated. The mother telling him, you're all worthless, good for nothing, boy, you know, you're going to come out like your pooper, the father missing, or, you know, the mother left to go make life better, foreign, and never come back, and they're dealing with mommy issues and abandonment issues, and then it triggers into life. They don't know who to be. So, yes.
All right.
Second question. So, Jamaica has not outlawed psilocybin. Not necessarily legalized it, but they never outlawed psilocybin, mushrooms. So there are other countries, like the United States, that are talking about maybe legalizing it for the mental health benefits. You already have it legal here. Are there any agencies that are trying to integrate that into mental health here?
So I have been approached by a supplier, actually, but I am not trained for that, and so I don't think it would be fair for me to embark upon something with my clients that I am not trained in. Also, personal preference for me are just natural ways of coping. It's amazing a person getting up and exercising for half an hour for the day. You would be amazed how that regulates you and transform your entire day. So it's literally the little things that I do. I had one gentleman, he was struggling, you know, mid-age, you realize you haven't accomplished this, and that, and now you're in this crisis. My sessions with him, I said, the next session, bring your laptop, we're going to do budgeting. And he's looking at me like, yes, we're going to do budgeting. And then I emailed him, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I said, you need to read half of this before you come back to your next session. If you don't come back. Don't come back to the session, because I'm seeing what he needs, right? So yes, you're depressed, and yes, this is happening, but what is the cause of what is happening? You're having a financial crisis. Let's deal with that.
So the whole mushroom thing, that's more of a psychiatrist.
Trist,
I
right,
I think
got-
a mushroom thing is pretty much like medical marijuana.
Right.
It is not
It's medical.
official, really, and there are persons who organize retreats, and they get those persons who have interest in using that form of thing will come in and they will take their mushroom and have their trips, so to speak, and.
So are you for,
Just
against?
don't
Are you saying
overdose.
stop? Are you saying okay?
No, well, I don't have enough information,
Right.
and so I can't really say whether or not it is a good thing or a bad thing. I just know of it being available, and have been approached just like her to participate, but I don't know enough, so I could participate.
To have an opinion at this time. Next question.
Hi. I was outside with a fellow volunteer.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And one of the things that was brought up as it relates to substance abuse, like in Jamaica, like the drinking and not the marijuana, like hardcore drugs. And she was inquiring, is there specifically when it comes to substance abuse, is there specific treatment centers or like groups? Because also tied in with the cultural norm, like drinking is not a big deal, right? Or going to the bar, clubbing. So a person may not see that as an addiction when it's like, so are there treatments or groups for people who may cross that line and they're just out here just struggling and they don't see they have a problem?
All right, so it's so funny because that was one of my first things when I moved back to Jamaica, because I'm familiar with AA overseas. And we don't have that, but we do have, there are substance abuse centers. There's also a hotline. I don't know the information offhand, but there's also...
National Council for Drug Abuse.
Right, the National Council for Drug Abuse, right. So, you know, they deal with a lot of that. But I am glad that you mentioned the fact that we're social drinkers. So it's such a part of our culture that being drunk and acting up and doing all of that can also become the norm. So we have to be careful of that also, because who do you become after you have been intoxicated? Because there are some persons that when you tell them what they were doing during that, they don't believe you because they can't remember ever doing those things. And you know, I would really say if you get to the place where you recognize that you have a problem, get the help, because it's going to affect every aspect of your life.
All right. Next.
Hello. First, I wanted to thank you for coming today, and I really appreciated this panel. As a resident alien myself, I have a couple of questions. The first one being, do you know of any Ministry of Health initiatives to do some of the work that you, like what you do at the church, like working with children, doing sort of mindfulness type of things so that as they grow up, they have more tools available to them? For example, I taught yoga this morning just down the beach, and a young woman came and joined me. She was 28 years old, and she said, "Oh, I've never done anything like this before." And it was just lovely to be able to like work with her and show her just breathing and stretching and like how much that can change how you feel. And so, and then if there are organizations or initiatives like that with the Ministry of Health, is there opportunities for volunteering as a resident alien living on the island?
Do you know?
All right, and that's a brilliant question because you say so much in what you just said. So a couple of things. Because I don't work for the Ministry of Health, I'm not sure how the volunteering will go, but I will be happy to give you my information after because I do know several persons within the ministry. Something that I have been doing is, again, partnering with persons who do these things. So we may have, like I do play therapy with children. So I have drums at my office, I have toys and things that sometimes they may come and they don't want to talk, but you get the information out of them with what they are doing. They're drawing, they're playing drums, they're doing all these things. Another thing is, like you said, yoga, meditation. These are all forms of therapies. So are you currently living here now? Yes. All right, so we'll definitely talk because I do know therapists like myself, there are several of us that we love unconventional ways because we know that it actually works. And so if you can form relationship with a therapist to be able to facilitate some of those trainings, then I think that would be good also.
All right, next up. It's on.
Okay, Doc. I don't want to come to Jamaica and pay anything for health care. Now, let me tell you what I have right now. Not to brag.
Tell us where you are, or where you're coming from, so that they have it in context.
Okay, I'm a retired military from the U.S. And there's one other lady here I met who's also retired military. And when I go to the doctor, I don't pay anything. Okay? The military offers me something called TRICARE for life. Okay? I have Medicare, and there are a few folks here probably are on Medicare. Okay? The Medicare part, we already paid for. we paid for that. Okay? And the only thing I pay for when I go to the VA hospital is my glasses, which is about $50 to see the doctor. Aside from that, when I'm sent off base for treatment, or if I go on base, there's no fee. Now, this is an opinion question. Your opinion, doctor. On Medicare.
Are you, well, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so on Medicare, this is for your opinion. Returnees with Medicare, is there any discussion with the U.S. concerning Medicare acceptance in Jamaica? Most of us here have Medicare. Is this something I should address with Medicare back home? What's your opinion? What's your opinion about Medicare being used there?
Right. I am not sure as to how that would work here. I know that in the past, when we had what was it called? Blue Cross, right? When we had Blue Cross as a health insurance operating here, there was a partnership, Blue Cross Blue Shield, that would cover foreigners if you have that kind of insurance. But in terms of Medicare and the others that are primarily a US-based insurance, I don't know how that would work here. There is no arrangement that I am aware of. Like I said, we have a sort of universal health insurance, but that is only to cover medication costs.
For chronic illnesses that are listed
Yes.
for NHF.
Not to prolong this, but do you think it's political on both sides, or they're just lazy to do the paperwork to put this in place?
I am not sure whether or not, anyone is looking into that, but it's something that could be explored, yes. Okay. Or if there is any sort of collaborative effort between our private health insurance and the American health insurance.
Thank you. I was born in Jamaica in the 50s and 60s. I grew up, and we didn't hear anything about abuse. So is it because of a lack of media back then? Have you done any studies as to see how far back this goes, child abuse and things like that?
I am not actually trained to speak on that one. However, I think it is yes, because we did not have media coverage, and there was no social media, so less was known, and a lot of cultural thing to it, because it was quite acceptable for a child to be scolded and to be, and to get a beating. I mean, anyone could have done it in a community because it was more a communal kind of upbringing. So your Master John could scold you, he could give you a whipping, and when you get home, you couldn't complain about it. Okay, you get another one again. And that was culturally acceptable, right? So I think, you know, the whole thing is changing, and therefore the nomenclature and what is called abuse is different now from what it was then.
Okay.
I was going over the Child Protection Act with my mom because I was going to speak at a church and she was with me. And, you know, I'm going through the act and I said, Mom, you know, if this act came out when I was a child, you'd have been in prison. And she looked me dead in the eye and she says, I know. So what I realized is that many of the parents many of the things that they did that would have crossed over to abuse is out of frustration. A lot of Jamaica homes are headed by women, single women who are doing 3, 4, 5 different works that our physical body wasn't even developed to do that. And so out of frustration, they take it out on the children. And so to answer your question, abuse has been around for a very long time, you know, but now I think we are becoming aware of the difference between scolding your child, right, and abusing them. So, and I'll share something with you. There was one little boy that I was working with, and it was not for abuse. He came in because he's fighting. And where his chair was lower than mine. So somehow I saw over his head, like about up here. So I said, come here. I said, what happened? Here. And he goes, oh, I fell down the stairs. I said, on your head? And he goes, yes, auntie. But I'm staring him dead in the eyes now, right? And I held his hand, I said, you know I'm on your side, right? What happened? He just started crying. My mom said I mustn't tell anybody. My mom said I would. She used the belt and the buckle and burst his head. Now that has to be reported right away. That's abuse. So, and this is why it's so good.
That was an accident.
You had
It's an accident.
It's an accident. But this is what is happening to a lot of our children. We have children coming in with burns. Their parent burned them. That's abuse, you know?
One final question. Do you receive any government funds, Yuda?
I don't personally receive any government funding. However, there are some initiatives that I just now embark upon. So when I go back to Kingston, I have a lot of files on my desk. Jamaica recently introduced the Child Diversion Program where, you know, at-risk children, juveniles, instead of just packing up everybody in the juvenile center, they are now diverting them. So many children are now getting treatments, psychological treatments, and also rehabilitation to become better citizens versus just finding a juvie center to send them. So that's something that I just now start doing some work with them. But no, I don't get funding from the government.
We're going to have to wrap this panel, so if for the additional questions, we're going to ask you to give it to the team member and we'll have them answered. But Dr. you to close off in terms of government subvention to your private practice, is that something that you get?
No.
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 Nothing at all?
Nothing at all, no.
No.
Okay.
Not even importation of medical equipments.
So you could have used that as your
Still
wish,
have
you
to
know?
pay the import duties. Still have to pay, yeah.
All right, so we are going to wrap it there. For our second panel, we want to say thank you so much to Dawn Petgrave, an associate psychologist with the D. Marie Institute, as well as Dr. David Garwood, the medical director at Perfect Health. Thank you so much.
Hey, Throp here. You just finished watching a clip from On Deck with Throp. If you want to watch the full version, you can click here. If you want to watch another video, you can click somewhere else. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.